oh my gosh, I just did Command Shift something, and now everything's highlighted, and I'm at the bottom of the document. Oh gosh. And there's no way to get back to it.
You're never going to recover from that.
Where's the home button? Oh, geez. Sometimes using a non-keyboard computer is hard.
Oh, yeah. If only you had bought that magic keyboard.
I'm going to copy this. Would it be helping me? I have no idea. Oh, no, wrong show.
That's from your other podcast.
Yeah, that's from my other podcast. Okay. Blah, blah, blah.
I think the cough that you did away from the mic was quieter than the cough that you did into the mic. So
what?
Thank you for that.
How now, brown cow? We got to get it all out. Okay.
One of those days.
Yeah. I had a bunch of drainage like yesterday or the day before, just out of control. I was totally fine. Went to bed and I was like, weird. I have sinus drainage. I wonder if I'm going to have a sore throat in the morning. And I totally did. So I've been taking Benadryl. I have more of a gravelly voice today,
yeah,
like just like a little bit.
I noticed that.
But hopefully that brings in more listeners.
Yeah.
But I don't know, guys. That new co-host that Daniel has a much more attractive voice.
Well, they'll be very disappointed next week whenever you're recovered.
Yeah, probably. So I have a few topics here on the pre-show, and I'm wondering if I was trying to save all this discussion for, we've kind of already talked about it a little bit, but if you know what all three of these things have in common.
Not really. And when you said you had multiple things for the pre-show, I was wondering if you were wondering how many of those you would get through before I just play the intro.
No, these are actually all connected.
Oh.
I have the topics here of brisket.
It's all connected.
My toe and a busy Saturday.
All kinds of plans.
Yep.
Big plans.
It's a leading. How are those connected? We brought my smoker to my parents' house to smoke a turkey over Christmas, and I hit my toe on the smoker when I was loading it into the truck.
That's a bad time to hit your toe too, because it's not like you can just you can't just drop the smoker. You got to follow through and finish it
for sure. I was like, hope that's okay. My right toenail is pretty black. I think it's going to turn out okay, probably.
This would be less of a problem if you weren't training for a marathon.
Exactly. So, like, in discussion with my wife and my mom and my stepmom, all of them were like, "You're going to lose that toe." Not toenail. Sorry.
That's a big difference.
Let me clarify.
Like, whoa.
They're like, "You're going to lose that toenail." And I'm like, oh gosh, I hope I don't. I really hope I don't. And so like that plus the drainage has reduced the amount of running I've been able to do this week. I haven't ran since Monday, and it's Friday now. And tomorrow I have to do a long run. And so I got to run like 18 miles tomorrow.
And you're coming into that cold because it's been, almost a week since you ran.
Yeah. So like I'm a little, downtrodden from the drainage. I haven't ran in enough days, and now I got this toe situation, and like I'm just gonna go for it tomorrow, and there is a non-zero chance that when I come back from the run I have one less toenail.
Oh. You think you would lose it on the trail? Like
if I'm gonna lose it, it's when I'm running running for 3 hours.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh boy, so that's gonna be a heck of a thing tomorrow, and then immediately after that, I have to smoke a brisket for my father-in-law for his birthday, and I was committed into doing this. Hey, Lucas, do you think you'd want to do this for your father-in-law who gave you the smoker, who smoked brisket for your wedding and is like particularly good and well acquainted with barbecue? Do you want to smoke him a brisket for his birthday? Blink, 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 blink. Why, yes, of course I do. This is like the Super Bowl of brisket smoking for me.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know how you're alive right now. It just seems like the pressure would be crushing you.
It's probably why my health faded, is just this thing that's looming over me. This is the most important smoke of my life.
It's true.
I can't emphasize that enough. I have not yet smoked a brisket that is more important than this brisket.
Oh man. So is that happening? I assume that's happening after the run.
Yeah, because we're going to do that the following day. So I'm going to smoke it in the afternoon, try to finish it as late as possible, 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. That way I can get it into the cooler and let it rest until we have it for lunch the next day.
And that's going to be a long day because that brisket smoking is that can be like a 10-hour affair,
like right? 30 minutes per pound is a good estimate, maybe a little longer. I had to buy a prime brisket because I didn't want to buy choice because once again, this is the most important brisket I've ever
don't
smoked.
Pull out all the stops.
Yeah,
sure.
but you can't really get small primes, and so I bought a 17-pound brisket. But I trim it down. I bought the one that had like too much of a fat cap. I got to get it all set right. I got to trim it down, get it really aerodynamic because that matters. It's a weird thing to say about meat, but that meat's got to be real aero. Anyway, so I think I can get it. It'll be about 15 pounds after I trim it perfectly.
So you're looking at like a 7.5, 8 hour.
I'm going to just plan for 10. I'm shooting for 10. I'll start it at noon, finish it around 10 o'clock or something like that. It'll be fine.
Yeah, but if you're running, what'd you say, like 18 miles, you're going to have to start running pretty early in the morning.
Yeah.
To get
for sure.
done.
I'm going to have to get out there get out there by 8, finish by like 11:30. And then get the fire started, shower, and then get smoking.
Man, you're going to be awake at 3 a.m. smoking that brisket.
Man, it's going to happen. It's going to be a whole thing. And the worst part is that I'm going to have to do the whole thing with 9 toenails.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
Show me that print, Daniel. I haven't seen that thing. Oh my gosh, look at it. Look at it. It looks good.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. It's a metal print of the SpaceX Starship, and I won it on Twitter.
That's very cool.
This is a 16 by 24 print, and this would be like $350 if you were to buy it. So,
do you know who shot it? Do you remember his name?
Yeah, the guy that did that was a guy named John Kraus. We can link his website, I guess, in the show notes. But he has kind of an interesting story. He started taking pictures of SpaceX launches. He does other rocket stuff now too, just like all space things. But he started doing that, I think, in high school. And then, SpaceX in particular has launched so many rockets in the past few years that it's gotten to where it could basically be a full-time job. They're launching them like multiple times a week now. And so I think after he graduated, he just started doing that full-time. And now he's like always there when they're launching stuff and takes pictures and sells prints and calendars and all kinds of stuff.
Doesn't he shoot on Nikon?
He does shoot on Nikon. I looked it up, and he uses a Z9, and then I think the other one's like a Z7 Mark II or something.
Very
big
cool.
Nikon guy.
Very cool.
Yeah. So now I'm going to have a Nikon picture on my wall.
Hey, I mean, aren't the other pictures that you have on your wall Nikon pictures?
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, dude.
I do have pictures from the old D40 on the wall. So there you
Daniel only frames Nikon pictures.
I mean, they're the only ones that are worthy of being on the wall, right?
Right, exactly. If it's not shot on Nikon, don't scale it up. That's a quote from Daniel. Daniel right there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Other thing we have to talk about before we get into this episode, Daniel, I need you to hold this and give me your first impressions. Daniel is holding my brand new Pentax 17 that came in the mail today.
It looks like a Fuji. It's got that same the same color pattern as the like the XT3, XT5. This is so much lighter than like a typical mirrorless camera with a battery. I definitely noticed that. I'm afraid to touch anything. It's like I don't know what all these things do.
Well, you can press whatever you want. The worst thing you're going to do is take a picture. There is a cap on it though. If you accidentally take a picture, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, that'd be a ridiculous mistake.
Just don't press the winding button on the bottom.
Okay. What you got some handwritten stuff in the back. I guess has like the little window where you put the film thing. What did you write on here in the back?
Yeah, so I took a look at what the flashing light chart for like what those things mean. So like it has a blue light and a yellow light, and then it'll either flash one of those slow or fast, or it will flash both of them at the same time. So you have 5 different potential light configurations of flashing. And there's no way that I'm going to remember that immediately. So I wrote them down I tore off the end of a film carton and I wrote it on the film carton and I stuck it into the back of the camera. Man. So I have a little cheat sheet.
That's annoyingly appropriate for a film camera.
It really is.
So I guess a couple of thoughts. I like the textures on it. The front has kind of like that fake leather. The back has like a plastic version of diamond plate or something. Yeah. It feels pretty nice. It feels pretty well made overall, honestly. I like how compact it is because the lens doesn't stick out very far.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I think it's cool.
It is pleasantly small. It is like the size smaller than my hand. Like I can hold the whole thing in my hand.
Yeah.
It is definitely one of the smallest cameras I've owned. I don't think it's much. I don't think it's smaller than like the GX7 that I had. That Panasonic.
But with the lens not sticking out very far, it feels like it would be pocketable.
Yeah, for sure. It does fit into the Napoleon pocket of my Timbuktu bag very,
nice.
very effectively. And so that's where I stored it when I came over here. I was surprised at just how plasticky it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's no metal on this really.
But you know,
display at all. The top and the bottom are like some sort of composite.
It's kind of nice though because it makes it very lightweight and it doesn't feel like, I mean, I think there's maybe a little bit of flex to it, but it didn't feel like creaky. You know, like it didn't feel cheap plastic.
No, it doesn't feel cheap. It feels solid and it's very light. I noticed on a bunch of videos that I watched on this, so there is a spot to put the strap on the left and the right top where you can mount a strap, and they're not like dangly rings. They're fixed in place like
as they should
they should be. But it came with a wrist strap, which is, everyone has noted, the exact length of the macro focal distance, so you can measure that.
I'm sure they did that on purpose.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
so like,
clever.
That is very clever. But there is another strap holder on the bottom right of the camera where you're supposed to put the wrist strap. So you can mount the wrist strap to it separate from your neck strap.
I like that.
And then
that's clever.
That's located so that it dangles appropriately down at the right angle. So whenever you are wrist strapping it, you want it to be on the bottom right, not on the top.
What is that little screw on the right side of the camera?
That is for the battery, and I almost lost that screw like 3 times. I took it off and I kept dropping it.
I don't like that it sticks out.
No.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's not a very
should be flush.
Good design for like that. Yeah, like why isn't it flush? Why didn't they do something slightly different? Maybe they make it like a, I don't know. That's a weird choice. I mean, it feels like an afterthought.
It doesn't feel like you would be changing the battery on a film camera very often.
No, you wouldn't be.
And so it's like, why is that? It's almost like it's made for like quick access. It's kind of weird.
It's not like in the way of your hand, but like I could see how that might be annoying.
It wasn't actually
heavier.
Uncomfortable when I held it, but I feel like I would try to fidget with it or something.
Yeah, it's strange. It feels like maybe they had something that didn't work and they had to like do that late in the game, and like that's why it's there.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
The loading the film into this was too easy. Like normally you have to like feed the film in a little bit, and then you advance and like pull it forward. For this one,
and you also have that step where you have to like find something to pry off the back.
Okay, that's just my Minolta Hymatic AF2 because those light seals made it way too tight. Normally you don't have to do that.
Okay.
This one you like literally just pull the film across, and so that it's all the way across the back.
Man, you said that twice correctly, and then you made a joke about yourself not saying it correctly.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyways, and that's it. And then you just like close it and then wind it. And I was so paranoid about like, did it catch and was I doing this right, that I ended up unwinding it and then pulling it back and then doing it again to like make sure that it was actually caught. So like my first few frames may be totally bunk, but yeah, whatever.
Is it any more of a problem with a half frame camera in terms of like lining up the film? Like, because if you get that wrong, that's a problem, right? But I guess it'd be a problem on any.
Well, I mean, no, like film doesn't have a designation on it for like where the frames are supposed to go.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
it just starts wherever it starts. Like the whole thing is exposable. And so like I
don't know why I didn't think about that, but that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of like how many can you cram into a full length. And so if you're really judicious about where you start your film, sometimes you can squeeze out an extra frame onto it and get like 37 maybe.
Interesting.
Or what a lot of people will do is they will purposely frame the first few, like, because you're supposed to like crank it, shoot, crank, shoot, crank, shoot in order to get it to line up.
Yeah.
Some people will try to like get that first exposure half exposed, and so it has that like gold streak across half the frame, and it looks like it's messed up.
Yeah.
But like that's like your first shot, and so people will try really hard to like land that frame just right on the film, and so
it's interesting too, like what you're saying about how you can sometimes squeeze out a 37th. With this one, it seems more likely that you get a 73rd.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't need a full extra frame.
I wish that they used glow in the dark paint for the number in the shot counter, because I get like in the dim lighting of this room, I cannot read this.
Yeah.
I think it says 4. So I have like 68 more shots to go.
I mean, the good thing is, especially on half frame, like how often are you really going to be in a situation where you're like carefully counting those shots? Like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like you need to refer to that often.
That's kind of my motivation and plan for this camera is like, I'm just going to shoot. I'm just going to shoot, and then have a bunch of like fun film photos.
That seems like what it's for. And you got a lot of film for Christmas, so you're loaded on film. But even if you weren't, it's like the pictures are costing you half as much as they would on a normal camera. Like that's got to be what that camera's for, is just to have fun shooting.
For sure. Yeah, I got 6 rolls of Ultramax 400 for Christmas, and then I got 5 rolls of film when I bought this camera for free.
Yeah, it was like part of the deal.
Yeah, and then I still have some black and white film that I got for my birthday, and then I bought an extra roll of Cinestill 800T. And so I have 16 rolls of film, not counting the Fujifilm Supera XT that I have. I have a roll of that's like from 2003 in my fridge that I've been saving for just the right occasion. So not counting that one, I have 16 rolls of film that I have to work through.
That is going to last you quite a while.
I'm so pumped. I'm just going to I'm hoping to shoot like 2 rolls between now and New Year's. I'm very excited, Daniel.
Yeah, as you should be.
It's when we get close.
I mean, that's so for people that don't know, you're saying between now and New Year's. I mean, right now it's evening on December 27th.
Yep.
And you said you're about 4 deep on that shop counter. Yeah. So you have to shoot 140 film photos.
Man, I'm going to do it
in the next 7 days.
It's going to happen. I'm so pumped. It's absolutely going to happen. And I got to shoot 72 or 68 more between now and like Monday, because I want to switch to the Cinestill 800 for New Year's, so that on New Year's Eve, because my plan is to push that a stop. I'm going to shoot that at a 1600 speed, which this camera has like an exposure compensation. And so like for like I'm shooting Fuji 400. I was really on the fence on whether or not to shoot Kodak Ultramax or Fuji 400 for my first choice, and I decided to go Fuji 400 because even though they're basically the same film stock, the 400 for the Fuji has a slightly warmer tint, and I kind of wanted a warmer tint. Anyways, it has an exposure compensation dial, and I know that like those kind of pharmacy films do a little better whenever you shoot like a little more overexposed, and you don't just don't underexpose them. And so I'm trying to push it about 2/3 of a stop. And like the thing on this will go from 0 to +2 and -2. And so you can set your actual film speed, which I did at 400, and then you can push it additional stops. I mean, if you're a madman or woman, you could set this into 3200 and then push it an additional 2 stops to 12,800, but that would be barbaric.
Especially because with the half frame, the grain would be extreme.
It would be out of
even
control.
More than normal.
Yeah, I've shot a roll of. I've never shot Cinestill 800 not pushed. I think the first time I shot it, I pushed it 2 stops, and the grain. No, that's not true. Whenever we went to Europe, I shot it even at 0. But the first time I shot it like 2 stops over, and it was barbaric. It was horrible. And so I'm hoping for somewhere in the middle that like shooting half frame is going to make the grain look bigger, and then shooting 1 stop over is also going to make the grain more apparent. So those Cinestill pictures are going to just be completely out of control.
So adjusting the exposure compensation on there, obviously for the auto mode, that would make the camera, behave differently. But if you're not shooting in auto, does the Pentax 17 have a meter on it to show you, or
no.
So really, the exposure compensation only matters in auto? Is that?
I mean, it's in auto all the time. It just has different modes of auto.
Okay,
so you can shoot in auto. Like if you shoot in straight up auto, it's going to decide when to use the flash. It's going to ignore. So you have 5 focus modes on it. You have mountain, parents with 1 child, or two grown-ups and 2.5
parents with 3 child.
I think it's 2.5 men.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Specifically that show, and then there's 2 people, 1 person, fork, knife, and then flour. So it's like
you gotta explain those people to me. What's the deal?
Well, it's like it's like far away, less far away, kind of far away, portrait, distance. I mean, I could just read you the stinking numbers on the front of it.
So you're saying that 2.5 men is farther away than 2 people.
2.5 men is 1.7 meters or 5.6 feet, and 2 people is 4 feet. Whereas 1 person, oh no, I messed that up. 1 person is 5.6 feet, so a little closer than COVID rules, and then multiple people are 10 feet.
Oh, interesting.
And a mountain.
That's like a group photo type.
Yeah, and a mountain is infinity.
Yeah.
A fork and knife is 1.7 feet. Or 0.5 meters, and then macro, which is the flower, is 0.82.
I was a little worried when you were talking about 4 feet and 5.6 feet, because I was like, how do you decide between those distances? But if it's 5 feet and 10 feet, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah. So it is still a matter of like person versus group.
Yeah.
Is a few feet different. But like you can use all 5 of those focus modes when you're shooting in P or bokeh or moon. which are the 3 different modes.
You have to call them that too.
Yes. And so moon is make the shutter speed slow to get more light in. Bokeh is make it shoot at 3.5 unless you absolutely can't because of the light meter. And then P is just like shoot in auto and then use one of these ranges of focus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you shoot in actual auto, it ignores your focus setting, basically. It'll sort of pay attention to prioritize based upon like the people or the mountain, but if you have like set in fork or flower, it just ignores those completely.
Oh, interesting.
And
so it's still picking one of the focus modes, but it just decides rather than using your setting.
Yeah, so auto is essentially built for you to straight up just point and shoot and not even think about your focus mode. It's going to try to push the aperture into like f16, f11 so that you have really deep focus as much as it can without causing too much blur. And then that's basically it. It's like auto is designed according to the manual to shoot from 1 meter to infinity, and you're supposed to just not care about it. And if it needs the flash, it's going to just flash. So, which is kind of cool to have that option of like, I just really do just want to point and shoot with this thing. You can put it in auto, but then if you want to kind of control the bokeh or the flash a little better, you can use those other modes.
So you can turn off the flash, but you have to use one of the other modes to do it.
Basically, yeah. Or you can purposely shoot with a flash, and you can shoot in a P mode that's flash or a moon mode that's flash.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're shooting film, if you want that disposable camera look, you've got to be using the flash.
Yep. Basically, like the moon modes try to shoot it at like, because it'll go down to a 1/4 of a second or a 4-second exposure. I can't remember which. I think it's a 1/4 of a second. So the moon modes basically force the slow shutter speed if you want to get like trailing lights or something. And then the bokeh mode forces the aperture open. So you basically have, it's like some people are going to want to shoot in shutter speed or aperture priority. But like we don't want to give you those full manual controls. But basically it's like you're going to shoot in one of those modes because you wanted to go to the extreme.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this camera doesn't have huge extremes. 3.5 and like the shutter speed's like 1/4 to 350, 1/350. Like there's not a huge range.
Yeah.
But like they give you the option of like how do you want this low exposure to happen, or do you just want it to be in program? So I feel like that was a good choice as far as just trying to make it work and make it approachable. And it's going to take me a little while to kind of figure out exactly how I want to use it. But I feel like for the start, I'm going to be shooting a lot in like the auto or the bokeh mode.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what you think of it after you've used it some. Because I mean, you literally just got it this afternoon and you've shot 4 frames of it.
Right. Yep.
And I think 3 of them were of my dog just now.
And one of them was with the cap on.
Which it tells you about, right? That's kind of cool.
Yep. If you turn it on and you have the cap on, it will start flashing at you saying, hey, dude, the cap's on.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
I ordered unless you have one, I ordered a 40.5 millimeter filter.
No, I don't have that size.
So I can like just lose the cap.
Yeah. Good plan.
Yeah. Boy, I went way too long on that. Daniel, I'm so pumped about this camera.
I think you could go longer, honestly. I bet you could just
All right, actually, no, you know what?
Just keep going.
Cancel everything. This is the Pentax 17 episode now.
We've already had a Pentax 17 episode.
This is the next Pentax 17 episode, and we're just going to keep going. I'm so excited about this camera, Daniel. Like,
you wanted it for a long time, and you finally pulled the trigger.
Whew, boy. Woo. Oh, man. We'll talk about it probably more in an upcoming episode after I've shot through. I bought more developer.
I feel like you need to use it some and develop some of the photos, and then maybe we can look back at it and see what you think.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot more thoughts after I've used it for a while. Oh man, I'm so pumped.
I bet you are.
Woo boy. I told my dad about it and he didn't care.
Why don't you just shoot digital?
Doesn't say Nikon on it. He went through the trenches, He shot film for years and had to deal with all the things. I'm sure he's like, I don't understand why you would ever go back to film.
And here you are.
Here I am, just like, I'm going to restore your old camera. He's like, you're an idiot. Thanks, Dad. Oh, boy. Anyway, okay. All right. Okay. This is our rumor episode, Daniel.
Yeah.
I don't even know how much time we have. I didn't even start a watch.
No telling.
No telling. I'm going to assume that we probably have half the episode left. Probably. Who knows?
That's a reasonable guess.
I was going to wait for you to start winking at me. Huh? What's that? Wink, wink? Okay, wrapping this up. Well, we only got to Fuji, so I guess we're going to... Anyway, so I listed a bunch of stuff here under each camera brand in our notes. I don't know how much you've researched, and I didn't really designate under these which of these are what I'm expecting for this year versus what are actual rumors.
Yeah.
And so...
a little bit of both.
They're a little bit of mixed up, and hopefully you can tell the difference.
I mean, any time there's rumor stuff, it really feels like people are there's credible rumors and not credible rumors. If you're interested in rumors, there's plenty of websites for them. I think a lot of them are run by the same person. It feels like they're run by the same person.
Yeah, it does.
It's all out there, and I mean, we're not really here necessarily to just like recap what you can read on the website, but I think it's kind of interesting to look at it overall and like, what have we heard? What do we think is interesting? And like, what feels like the glaring gaps? Like, what do we think is actually going to happen? I think that's maybe more interesting to talk about rather than just like, rumor A, rumor B.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely a mix of all that. And I would say that any rumors that we reach out here, we're going to take with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think that's fair.
I probably went to some sketchy part of the internet to find him. So.
Yes, indeed.
I was gonna make a joke to be like, yeah, that's called DP review, just like a super sketchy part of the internet, a wasteland. Anyways, anyway. Ha 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 ha. Moving on. Let's talk about your favorite camera brand, Canon.
Oh yes, Canon.
The more time goes on, the more I'm like, I could see myself shooting Canon. If these R6 III rumors are true, I mean, I'm not going to switch. I'm just going to switch more into Pentax. And they released that film camera, 100% film, guys. No, there's some. I was kind of like, what is Canon going to do? They released all the cameras.
They had a big year this past year.
They had a big year this year. They had a big year last year too for 2020. I guess this is coming out in 2025. So 2024 was like all their flagships.
Yeah.
And then 2023 was all of their low-end cameras.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, I mean, there is rumor that they're going to potentially do an R7 Mark II this coming year. I would be surprised. It feels early for that.
It does feel a little early, but I mean, maybe that's their big seller on the lower end. I'm not sure.
I mean, it is the best non-full frame camera that they make.
Mm-hmm.
It's the R7 Mark II is still, or the R7 just straight up is still a really competitive camera. I mean, it's like what, $1,800 or something like that. But it's like 33 megapixels and it's full. It's APS-C. But it's a decent camera. It's got really good video specs. It's one of the better APS-C cameras you can buy that aren't Fuji.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, I mean, there are some rumors that like maybe they comes out with a stack sensor and they start kind of pushing some of the new autofocus features into that camera. But to me, it seems like R7's less likely. I think the most likely thing for this year is going to be an R6 Mark III.
That feels like more of their bread and butter. But the R6 II didn't come out that long ago, did it? Was it 2023?
I'm just going to take a stab at it, but I think the R6 Mark II came out late 2022.
Okay. So it I mean, yeah, maybe by the end of 2025, maybe it's been long enough. I feel like for people that are like a serious hobbyist or doing light professional work, I feel like the R6 is kind of the go-to camera for that. So that seems like a good one for them to try and keep competitive, keep up to date.
I think that for video stuff, there's a lot of detractors for having a 48, 46, high megapixel sensor for your main video camera for your brand. Readout speed and getting true like you're gonna have to start oversampling a lot of stuff, or you're gonna have to line skip.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want like really fast, good performance that's pixel for pixel, that 24 to 30 megapixel is starting to feel like the sweet spot, because you can shoot in like 6K open gate, and sensors have gotten fast enough that you can do that at reasonable speeds.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, like a stack sensor like the Fuji with the 14-bit readout for the XH2S is like, really fast, but you can only go to like 30 frames per second in 6K. We haven't really seen too many like 6K 60 frames per second in too many cameras. I mean, maybe some 8K stuff in like pure raw readout modes, but like this 24 megapixel area for Canon is the R6. And if they put a stack sensor in that camera, or like maybe they took the sensor from the R3, which is like a 24 megapixel stacked, and the R3 came out in 23 or 22. I can't remember.
It feels like it was 23. I don't think it was that long ago.
Yeah, I don't think it was that long ago either. And I would be surprised if they brought it into the R6. But if they did that,
that'd
if they did something like that, that would be a really interesting, capable sensor into that $2,500 price point, which could be pretty great for Canon as far as like a lot of camera for the money.
Yeah, for sure.
Additionally, like if they brought, there's a lot of really cool autofocus stuff that they released with the R5 Mark II and the R1. And so seeing some of that autofocus features, maybe the same viewfinder that they put on the R5 Mark II, which is that 5.6 million dot with the eye detection and stuff.
Oh man,
like if they brought that down,
I don't know, man. That feels a little hopeful to me.
It does a little bit, but I think those three things, like if it's at the point where they could reasonably do the viewfinder, a stacked sensor in 24 megapixels at that price point, at that $2,500 price point, the R6 III would be all of a sudden this incredibly capable camera, which would be really good for the money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'd be pretty interesting to see. Like, I know I felt more interested in Canon mostly because of their video stuff, but like obviously if I was going to switch to them, I would be interested in good photo options, and that seems like it would be a lot more competitive. So it'd be interesting to see it.
Is there anything else that you'd be curious to see from Canon this year?
I mean, they're going to have to keep building out their lens stuff. We talked a few weeks ago about, are they ever going to open up RF mount? I feel like that, like, who knows? Who knows at this point? But I'm curious to see if they do more of the hybrid lenses, because it seems like they've built out that line quite a bit this year. But besides that, I'm not sure. I know there's been some rumors about like doing a new point and shoot, something like that, doing a like a retro camera. I don't know if they'll do anything like that, and I'm not super interested in those things. So I guess I'm curious to see if they keep going with the hybrid lenses.
I think that they will. They did the 3 primes, and they did the 24-105, and they did the 70-200. It's kind of like the basics. I don't know. I mean, what else will they come out with? I'm sure they'll fill out maybe some other sectors of the line, maybe an ultra wide zoom.
Yeah, I was going to say I could see them doing like a 15-35 type thing or something.
Yeah, probably something like that. That's maybe within the same body style internal zoom. Almost like take the exact same thing. Like they use the same size and weight essentially for the 24-105 and the 70-200.
Yeah,
maybe they do the same thing for a 15-30, 2.8 or whatever, and that's like here's our complete video. Line set or whatever. Yeah. So that would be interesting to see. I think that besides like the new Blackmagic VR camera that's come out and like custom rigs, Canon's really the only one we've seen me pushing into like the VR space for the cameras. They
made that lens for APS-C.
Well, they've made like 2 or 3 of those lenses. They've made like the cheap one and then a more expensive one for full frame.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're one of the brands that is maybe like keeping an eye on where VR is going.
It does seem that way.
And so I think it wouldn't be out of place to see them maybe release something that's like specially made for VR next year.
Yeah, that's true. And, I mean, we'll see what happens. What else happens in that space? Like, I think the Apple Vision Pro hasn't, really seen a lot of success. So maybe there's less motivation to do that. But it feels like VR stuff is coming sooner or later, and I can't imagine them wanting to just like cede that market to Blackmagic. So I could see them pushing further on it.
Yeah, I mean, Canon's such a big share of the market. It feels like that they would want to at least pick up some piece of it.
It does.
You were maybe a little down on point and shoots. I feel like they're going to release a new PowerShot next year, and something that's not dumb like the last PowerShot.
Well, the thing that Canon has going for them is that if you ask like a random person on the street about camera brands, Canon is probably one they're going to think of. So for like a casual person buying a point and shoot camera, I think Canon's brand still has a lot of power.
I want them to come out with like a fixed prime lens camera, kind of like, the Q3 or the X106. And I want them to call it an Auto Boy.
Yeah, you do.
Like so bad.
Just like the film days.
Just so bad. There is talk that they may do like an AF one or something like that, like some sort of AE one or AR one maybe, where it's like some retro inspired whatever that's built after the AE one, but it's a Canon. I don't think it's gonna happen, but like I don't know.
What if they did this, but they wanted to put some 2025 flair on it, and so instead of being the Auto Boy, it was the AI Boy.
No, Daniel, that's ridiculous. Get out of here. Another one that I would be happy if they were used is the Canonette. There was that old
a pretty good name.
Canonette film camera that was a fixed 1.7 mil aperture lens, and so it was. Well, it's one of the faster ones you can buy. That one and the Fujifilm Natura are like 1.9, 1.7 in that range. So that would be pretty cool too.
Yeah, it
probably not going to happen.
Kind of niche, but maybe.
I mean, I'll hold out for it.
Yeah, you would.
Anywho, that's not the rangefinder that I want. I've talked about whenever we first started talking about like when would one want a point and shoot camera, and I've kind of like to entertain the idea of having like a one-off photo camera that's just fixed lens, but I would want it to be full frame because all my other stuff is APS-C, and like why not just like stick a lens on my X-T5 and just shoot it? And so I don't feel like I could ever justify like a point and shoot digital camera film all day. I just keep buying these things, man. Oh my gosh. I have 2 now and I just can't stop. Got to get a 645. Anyways, for digital, I would want it to be full frame or something, right?
Yeah,
I
something
want it to be
different than what you have.
Different. And what's rumored for Fuji next year, potentially before end of March, is an X100 type camera, but GFX.
Yeah.
Have you heard of
the GFX 100 RF? I think.
Yep. That's the rumor. This would be cool.
Yeah.
Because then I could get all the film simulations, but it would be medium format.
Well, and I think it makes a lot of sense too, because like, besides the fact that the GFX cameras are so expensive, I mean, it's like, what, $5,000 at least for one. Besides that, it's like you're having to buy these lenses that are probably also expensive. They're big, and you're not using those lenses on anything else. So it feels like, am I really going to buy into this like whole new system that's just kind of for niche photo uses? And I mean, to me, that's not appealing. But it'd be easier to justify buying like a single purchase, like one camera that has a fixed lens and gives you something different that you're not getting from APS-C.
I don't know at what point I can stop justifying having unique cameras for different situations, because like I only take so many pictures. Like the volume of pictures that I take is essentially fixed, plus or minus 20%. Like if I start spreading that out amongst cameras, I mean, it starts getting out of control.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to justify getting a GFX 100 RF and have another camera that shoots digital photos. But boy, oh boy, Daniel, does this thing seem cool.
Well, and did you see all the rumors that, it seems like it might actually have quite a few manual controls?
Yeah, there's talk of them having like a crop zoom lever under the shutter button, and then having like a aspect ratio dial, so you can like set the aspect ratio physically. It is supposed to be PSAM, like all the GFX cameras, but they're talking about having a bunch of these different external controls.
Yeah, man, you'd love that. You'd have so many little like fiddly bits to fidget with while you're holding the camera.
Oh, for sure. Like if it's a 100 megapixel sensor is what's rumored to go into this, which would be like the GFX 100 II sensor. And if it's anything like a Q3, where they're like, hey, here's all these different modes that you can shoot with, so you can get the range of a big range of photo options out of this camera without having more than one lens. They could easily do that on a 100 megapixel sensor. I mean, like
True.
I think this thing's rumored to be like a 35 millimeter lens. I mean, you shoot 70 millimeter, you're still getting like 50 megapixels
yeah, good
or
point.
something. And then you do it again, and now you're getting whatever, 12.
Yeah, medium format does make the crop mode thing like a lot more usable than it would be on like APS-C or even full frame.
I guess I'm not thinking about that right. It's 24 if you doubled it, because it's like you go from 6 to 24 to that, and then it's over 100, right? Because it's like a 70% increase to go to, I forget, because you have to like double the sides. I don't know the exact resolution doubling, but yeah, I mean, like 100 megapixels, like you would probably get more ability out of this 35 millimeter lens, which would be cool. And 35 mil, it's like roughly a 0.71 crop factor for the GFX size sensors. And so if you're like, what is that in full frame equivalent? It's like basically a 27 2.8. Yeah, right around there. So it is technically would be slower. I know it wouldn't. It would be about the same speed as what you would get on like a X100 which is a 27 millimeter f2. So similar-ish enough, but this could be pretty cool. And it seems like it's not going to be much bigger than something like an X Pro 3.
I think the big question is going to be, what is the price?
That is the big question.
Because I mean, if it's $6,000, I think it's going to be competing very hard against the Leica Q3. And personally, I'd be picking the Leica. If I'm spending, $5,000 or more on a fixed lens point and shoot, I'm getting the Leica.
I think it comes down to the quality of the lens and the images. The Leica's it's giving you 63 megapixels, which I feel like will probably be indistinguishable unless that GFX lens is that good.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to have other features like the film simulations and et cetera, but it seems like it'd be a hard sell against Leica.
Yeah, I think that one could probably make an easy argument. If they were priced similarly, I think one could make an argument for the GFX over the Q3, but not the Q3 43.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like Fuji's probably not going to make lenses as good as Leica's, but you have a little more resolution. It'll be a purpose-built lens. I think they could probably compete reasonably, but I think that apochromatic lens that's on the Q3 43 is just that much better that you would realize more like actual resolution of the light than you would probably be able to get off of that GFX camera.
Yeah,
that's just a total guess, but I have a hunch that that's going to be where this thing lands.
Yeah, I could see that.
Even still, this seems super duper cool, and it is the one rumor that I'm most excited about for Fuji next year.
Yeah, because some of Fuji's other stuff doesn't, like, I don't know, it sounds like there's not going to be an X Pro 4. There was a chance that there could be an XE5, which I just kind of have a hard time getting excited about, I guess. Like, it feels like at the lower end, there's a lot of overlap between, like, what makes the XE5 special, compared to the XM5 and the XT
I think
50,
that
and it's just kind of, it gets muddled down there.
I think the XE5 could stand to be a rangefinder style camera with interchangeable lens. Like, if you could take an XM5 and put a viewfinder on it, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of people who are really down on that camera because it doesn't have an EVF. And I feel like that's where the E5 could potentially shine, is similarly sized, but more focused towards photo.
Yeah. Well, that would have to be what they would do. I don't see how it could work otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, it would need to be basically exactly the same as the XM5, which would be that, 24 megapixel sensor and that sort of thing. I mean, if they made a rangefinder camera version of the XT50, like they put the 40 megapixel sensor in there, I could see that too, and that would be very cool.
Yeah.
And if that's like, maybe that's how they distinguish their lines, is like, hey, our video cameras are based upon these 24 megapixel sensors, and you look at the XS20 or the XM5 or the XH2S, these are all 24 or 26 megapixel roundabout.
True.
Whereas all of our photo cameras are the 40 megapixel sensor. So maybe they go that route.
Yeah, I could see that, I guess.
There's one more possible rumor out here, is that there is rumblings of them making a wide aspect TX3 like pano camera.
Huh. I don't know about that.
Don't know if that would ever happen, but it would be super cool to have an actual panoramic camera in digital, because there isn't, like, everything that says to be a pano camera out there is like they're just basically cropping a 3x2 sensor, and they're not like taking multiple 3x2 sensors and slapping them next to each other and making a true panoramic image.
That'd be so weird.
It'd be super weird.
I want to see the lens for that thing.
I said that is one of the film cameras that I want. I want like a panoramic film camera, something that I can shoot like 3 images of 120 film on, and each picture costs like $5. That's what I want.
Wasn't there also a rumor that Fuji was going to do a quote unquote half frame digital camera?
You mean a film camera? Oh, a digital camera? Yes, I saw that.
I think that rumor's still out there.
So. That's ridiculous.
It doesn't make any sense.
So dumb.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And you mentioned film cameras. There was something that came up with that where somebody from Fuji like basically didn't rule out them doing it, but it didn't sound like an actual plan.
Yeah,
like,
they didn't say that they wouldn't. They weren't like, hey, would you ever make a film camera? I mean, I'm not saying no.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, confirm. Fuji's making a film. No.
Yep.
Come on.
Yep. Welcome to rumor websites.
Yeah. Anyway, that's probably all that we need to do to talk about Fuji.
We've got a lot more ground to cover in this episode, Lucas. We're going a little
okay.
Little
We'll pick up the tip of the pace a little bit.
Good idea. All right, let's take a break for a second and then try and get through some of these other ones a little bit faster. We'll be back in just a moment, but we wanted to let you know that if you'd like to support the show, you can now subscribe to us on Patreon. It helps cover our hosting costs so we can keep the show running, and you might find an occasional behind-the-scenes post on there, like some photos we've taken recently or a mini review of some new gear. If you're interested, you can find us at patreon.com/cameragearpodcast.
All right, so Daniel, there's so many left to go through. I mean, I feel like we should hit the big ones, and then this may have to bleed into another episode.
Maybe let's do this. I see you've got some lens stuff on here. Why don't we focus on cameras?
Okay, let's focus on cameras,
and then let's not talk about OM systems because I mean, what are they doing anymore?
All right, so let's skip over. We can't skip over this thing for Sigma though. Like, do you think they're gonna do the Foveon thing next year?
Man, we've been. I think we probably talked about that in last year's rumor episode. And honestly, at this point, I'll believe it when I see it. But I feel like Sigma's doing so well with making lenses, and kind of playing that game. And the Sigma FP was not like, it's not like a really popular camera. I mean, I'm sure there's some people using it, but it doesn't seem like that took the world by storm or anything. So I don't know if they are or not. If I was Sigma, I would just focus on what I'm good at and not try and do this weird new sensor thing, because it just seems like a big uphill battle for them.
But the CEO is worried that he's going to be haunted by the ghost of his father if he doesn't do it.
I don't think I know that backstory.
It's like the CEO was like promised his father or something that he would like do this thing.
Oh man.
And so like it's like a matter of honor or whatever, or he's like worried that he's going to be haunted, and they basically have to do it. And so like as long as this guy's the CEO, it essentially has to happen.
I guess I need to retract all my previous statements, because if I was under that kind of pressure, I'd be working on that camera. So
for sure,
maybe it is coming next year.
I would love to see Foveon become a real thing. It just seems like it's such an uphill battle with CMOS and how these Bear CMOS sensors have become so good.
Yeah.
But it's like if we could get into a 3-layer sensor where like every pixel is all 3 colors, you could get closer to the perfection that is film.
I mean, the uphill battle thing is just what gets it for me. They would have to convince people to go with that over a traditional camera, and we know from Fuji X-Trans that getting support in things like Lightroom is not a guarantee for a different sensor type, and so are you going to buy this camera that doesn't demosaic properly in Lightroom, and like how much is that going to be a turn off for people? It just seems like they'd be fighting a pretty strong battle to actually get this thing to take off.
Oh, it's a huge challenge. Yeah. Huge.
We'll see though. I mean, it's all about the honor.
Exactly. But not like the Huawei honor.
No, yes, not that one.
Don't get confused. Okay, skipping over Tamron, and let's talk about Sony.
Oh, yeah. The people love talking about Sony.
I think Sony's great.
So Sony is probably due for a new A7, right?
In some form. If I recall, the last few times that they revamped their lines, going back to the A7R4, the cadence was something along the lines of A7R4, A7 III.
Yeah, it was like it was always behind.
A7S2 kind of situation. And so they came out with the A7R5 first. Then they released the A7 IV, and then they released the A7S3, and then they released the A1 something.
Yeah. I mean, the
A1 was before that, but even still.
But kind of like along with that cadence, usually they update the A7 to have the same number as the R before they update the R again. So like, even though it was like A7R5, A7 IV, I think we would expect to see an A7 V before we would see an A7 R6. Don't you think?
I would hope so, but I think that last time we didn't. I think that they vamped the R line before the vanilla 7 line.
So you think there was a brief period of time where they had A7 R5 and A7 III?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see. I mean, the A7 IV is a really good camera, but it feels like they're due for an A7 V.
I think that right now rumors are leaning towards the A7 V being a Q1 camera for 2025.
Yeah, that's soon. That would make sense. And I'm assuming it would be, kind of like the same bracket where it's like that low 2000s. Like I think the A7 IV is a little more expensive, but like let's say 2500 or below.
Yeah, for sure. I think that 2500 is the price point. I also think that the A7 IV, A7 V, like that line is the default camera. Like if someone's just going to recommend, hey, like what's a good full frame camera to get that's not like $1 jillion, what do I buy? And it's like, if you can afford it, buy an A7 blank.
I think you're right. I mean, especially if like for YouTubers and stuff, but even in general, yeah, I think that's probably the case.
Yeah, like the default hybrid full frame camera. And I think that the things that they could do to this to make it Like there's some of these are rumors, but the things that they could do for the A7 IV to make it hyper compelling, in my opinion, is like get an uncropped 4K 60 mode into that camera because there isn't one.
That's starting to feel like a glaring omission.
Reduce the rolling shutter because oh my gosh, we can't be doing this 26 millisecond rolling shutter. There's some talk of an OLED EVF. That would be cool. It'd be like a first in some of these cameras. Take it or leave it. But get the new screen on there. So like if they got the new flippy tilty screen, they improved the sensor such that it was not really bad at rolling shutter and could shoot 4K 60 video. That would be perfect. I'd be happy with it. Stick the AI chip in there, make it good at autofocusing. In my opinion, that's really all they have to do.
Yeah, I think so too.
And like we don't really know what's coming here. Like this could be a small revamp, which the A7 IV was kind of a small bump on the A7 III. So there's possible this could be revolutionary. Who knows?
I mean, the A7 IV has the 10-bit sensor.
Right.
And the A7 III did not.
Yeah.
If nothing else, that's a pretty big improvement.
Ish, yeah. There is a new Sony sensor that's like out there, and it's just like IMX 366AJK sensor.
Oh man, that's a classic Sony.
Yeah, man, a new one. This is a 44 megapixel sensor that can shoot 8K. It can shoot 12-bit video, which like everything, and then it's like 26 frames per second at full resolution in RAW. It's like the capabilities of this sensor. And there is some rumor that like, hey, Sony could shove this thing into an A7 V.
They could put it in there and then maybe just like, like downclock it a little bit or something. Because when you say 44 megapixels, that sounds more like A7R territory to me.
It does, but the A7R is 63.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe they've just moved on. It would certainly like make a splash if their $2,500 camera had a 44 megapixel sensor.
I think it would be huge. I mean, Fuji's $2,500 photo camera has a 40 megapixel sensor and it's APS-C. So
that's true.
I think that it's not impossible that we get a really fast 44 megapixel sensor out of this thing. I would be annoyed if they went that route just to get us 8K and the rolling shutter sucked. And it had it was like the only way you could get good video on it was like you can shoot 4K 60 but it's line skipped, and then it's 8K at full resolution but it's really only good if you do it in RAW, and if you want like the good video you have to shoot oversample, but you can't do that. It's going to be cropped to shoot 4K 60, so you got to shoot 4K 30 for the oversample good stuff, but then it's going to overheat for whatever, so you got to pull the screen. Like if that's the story, I'm going to be really upset.
That is all exactly how Sony works, and that's exactly what it's going to be.
I can just like hear it.
Yeah.
Like all the YouTube videos are going to be just that.
Gerald Undone will do like a 45-second monologue of all that, and it's going to be like every other Sony camera.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I think it would be cool. 44 megapixels for photo at a $2,500 camera. Love it. Great. But if it's like your hybrid video camera, previously go back for 20 minutes in this episode when I was like 6K at like 24 is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
I still think it's the sweet spot. I don't think we're at the point where getting these 8K sensors are fast enough to be good enough unless you can shoot oversampled 8K at reasonable frame rates and reasonable rolling shutter, which you can't.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a really good stack sensor.
Yeah, I agree. Like the resolution is nice, but it's not at the point yet that I would be willing to take that resolution if I'm giving up in other areas.
For sure. So we'll see. Maybe this sensor is like super baller and they can do all the things and they'll just like pull a Sony and be like, what? Drop the mic. Well, who knows? Yeah. Who knows? Sony kind of sometimes pushes a little certain things farther than they should be. So
yeah, I agree.
A7 V, we'll see. Okay, I think we're gonna, Daniel, we're not gonna make it through all this stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a part 2 on this for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe let's finish up Sony and then we can part 2 the rest of this because there's still a lot here for Sony.
I think you're right.
And okay, so all this point and shoot stuff, like Panasonic released their Z99 or whatever. They're like, okay, we're gonna refresh a point and shoot camera. Point and shoots are still really big right now. Do you think Sony is going to do it? Are they going to come back and release a new RX100? Are they going to release a new RX1R? Are they going to bring back a bingo
card? That's on your bingo card.
Yeah, it sure is. Is it going to happen this year, Daniel?
I mean, it could, right? Like we're seeing a big resurgence in that type of camera. Fuji kind of broke that market back open, and we've been hearing lately that it seems like more people are into film, which is kind of feels like it's in the same category of like casual, like vibes picture taking. And so doing a new version of those cameras would make sense because for a long time, Sony had really good, like really competitive cameras in those spaces, and it feels like now they don't really compete there as much. So I could see it happening, but I think it's a coin flip.
I think that if they come out with a new RX camera, and it doesn't even have to be the full frame RX1 Mark III, if they just come out with a new RX 100, point and shoots are back.
Think so?
Like,
that you're calling it now.
Definitively, point and shoots are back if Sony does it.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's where I'm landing on that.
Okay. Hot take.
They, like, as previously mentioned, usually the A7R whatever line comes before the A7 line.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's unreasonable that we also see an A7R6 next year. Maybe not. Like, I haven't seen too many rumors about it, but I would think that late 2025, early 2026, I think an R7, R6 is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I can't remember, I mean, it's hard to keep the stats on all these cameras straight, but I don't remember the A7R5 seeming that exciting over the 4. Like, it was better, but it didn't seem like it was like, it didn't blow us away.
It's very Sony to TikTok, where they keep the same sensor for 2 generations. And they had the 63 megapixel sensor in the A7R4 and the A7R5.
Yeah.
And a lot of the conversation around the A7R5 was buy an A7R4 because it's cheaper.
Especially, when used, for sure.
Which, oddly enough, was the same thing that people were saying about the A1 Mark II. It's like, buy the old one because it's cheaper.
And so it makes you wonder, like, since the 5 was kind of like the talk, would the 6, be a big step up?
There has been so much talk about who was going to go 100 megapixels first in full frame. And
how is it, if that happens, how is it not Sony?
And there is also talk of like, hey, look at this incredible sensor. And like, I think that it's not apples to apples as far as like, here's the Fuji sensor, here's the Sony sensor. And like, I don't know to what extent Fuji designs their sensors and Sony fabs them versus like what technology the fab has on hand, but they're making a 40 megapixel APS-C sensor. And like going from APS-C to full frame, it's not an exact like doubling of whatever resolution, but I mean, you're going to get like a 50%, 70% increase in pure area just going from.
You just think density wise, they wouldn't be that far off from doing it.
Yeah, I think that like going from 40 megapixels, I mean, I feel like you could push probably, I mean, you're not going to hit 80, but I think you can do more than 63. In like, I'd have to go back and like do a density per pixel or whatever, and then math it out, which I probably should have done before this thing.
But it's all going to come. It's also going to come down to like heat. Like if you double things, like you have to do something about the heat. You also have to be able to read out 100 megapixels or 80 or whatever and process all that data with some sort of reasonable rolling shutter, which
Fuji's doing it with the medium format.
Yeah. I mean, Fuji's doing it, and Sony like obviously has good technical chops, but their existing sensors are also not great on rolling shutter. So I don't know. Maybe for a photo camera, it'd be okay.
Maybe. I mean, like Fuji's doing the 40 megapixel and the 100 megapixel, and those are Sony wafers. And I mean, at that point, it's like, okay, like here's a density that they can achieve. I think that it's totally reasonable. Like if someone's going to push that resolution, it's going to be Sony first. They have the highest resolution, like full frame sensor right now at 63.
And it just fits their style of like being the technology leader on a lot of this stuff.
So my question is, if they bump it, which I think they will, I think that we'll have higher than 63 megapixels in the A7R6. I don't know if you agree, but if they bumped it, how high do you think that they would go?
I mean, 100 would be a great number for them to hit, like marketing wise. I feel like they would go to 100. I feel like 80 is kind of, I mean, it'd be impressive, but it just seems like they'd really want to push to match things like GFX.
Yeah, and I don't think that it is that different. Like if you looked up the dimension, like what's the pixel resolution of a 100 megapixel photo versus a 63 megapixel photo, it's not substantial. Kind of like, wow, I went from 26 to 40. I doubled my resolution. No, you added like 2,000 pixels. Like you were at 4,000 and now you're at 6,000 basically, or you're at 6 and now you're at 8, I guess is what that actually is. And so like going to, I think like you're at 10 or 12 whenever you get to 100. I have to go back and look, but like, so you're going from like 8,500 on the bottom width to like maybe 10,000. So you're adding another 2,000 or 3,000 pixels of width and height. And that's like, it's not really that much.
Can you say that second dimension again?
Height. What? Height.
Okay.
I'm not saying a wrong word, Daniel.
Okay.
Whatever. Okay. How would you say it?
Height. We didn't say the same thing. You're adding an extra H on the end. Height.
Yeah. Because whenever you, it's like this is the height of something.
Yeah, you see there, you said it right.
Yeah,
The
but
height.
then like if you're saying it in a different context, you may be talking about height.
I don't think so. Just so people know, not everybody from Texas speaks this way.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay, moving on. Do you think there will be a new A7S ever? Also this year.
Just put a cap on it. I think that Sony will shoot for 80 megapixels, not 100. I don't think they're going to hit 100, but it's going to be them or Canon first.
All right, we'll see who's right.
And then I do not think we're going to see a new A7S this year. I think that's similar to the pining that we had to do for an A7S III, that the A7S IV will not be until 2026.
Yeah, man, that was brutal waiting for the 3, and I don't know. I think it's a toss-up whether they'll ever make another one, because the FX3 came out and was basically the same camera but better.
Well, I mean, it's going to be an FX4, right? It'll be either an FX4 or an A7S4.
Yeah.
Maybe they do both. Maybe they don't.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think they'll do both. I think they are going to do an FX3 Mark II or an FX4. I don't think it'll be next year. I think it'll be the following year. But I kind of think the A7S line dies. I think they introduced that new like lowish end FX camera, and I think that's going to kind of replace what the A7S line was.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. A7S II was October 2015. A7S III was October 2020.
Yeah,
5
so
years.
5 years.
So maybe 2025, we see it October, we see an FX4, A7S4. I would not put it past them to push for another year.
Yeah.
That would be crazy to go 6 years on that camera. But they've been putting that 12 megapixel sensor in like everything.
Yeah.
I want to see 24 megapixels. I want to see the A7S line go to 6K, and I want to see triple base ISO.
Yeah.
I think they
Those
need to
seem
meet
reasonable to me.
need to meet Canon at the C80.
Yeah.
Do better, and then
that would make the
put it in
FX 3, 4, whatever, more competitive, because it's right now it's cheaper than like a C80 would be.
Yeah.
And if they could, get closer on that resolution, that would help a lot.
Wasn't like the A7S III was like 3,500, and then the FX 3 was
like
4,000 or something like that.
Like 3,700. It was a few hundred more, but it wasn't much more.
I think
maybe it was 3,900 at most.
I'm thinking like 6K, triple base ISO, maybe stacked, maybe not, and $4,000.
Yeah, because if they can do that, it's still $1,500 cheaper than the C80.
Yep. So that would be super, super good. It would be great if that was this year. I wouldn't put any money on that being this year. I think they're still getting a lot of mileage out of that 5-year-old camera.
Sure seems that way.
So we talked about whatever, the RX, the S, the R, the 5, which is really like their 3 kind of A7 lines.
Yeah.
Those are probably all due sometime in 2025 or 2026. I think the only other thing that is potential rumor this year is FX6 and FX9.
Yeah, and I've actually seen more on the FX9 side.
What have you seen on that? Because I know that like FX9 is potentially coming, but I can't remember what the rumors were.
For some reason, I think the original came out in like 2020, and maybe it was 2019, and it just seemed like people were thinking that
2019.
Because I think the FX6 came out in more recently, in 2020 or 2021, and so I think people were thinking maybe the FX9 would be updated first.
Yep, the 9 was 2019, and then almost exactly a year later in November was the 6.
Yeah, I hope that rumor's wrong, because I could see myself being interested in an FX6 Mark II. Like, that's closer to the price range I would want to be looking at, like more of like a $6,000 camera rather than a $10,000 camera. So I'd like to see a new FX6. But, and it seemed like it was a toss-up, but the rumors seemed more along the lines of there being an FX9.
Yeah, I mean, the FX9 is essentially their competition for the C400.
Yeah, which like maybe they're feeling pressure to compete.
Yeah, it'll be their $10,000 cinema camera, and it would be cool to see a lot of what they did with the Burano come down to the FX9. Let's get that IBIS with a variable ND into maybe a cheaper camera body. It would be cool to see more those newer XOCN formats.
Yeah, exactly.
Come down to something that's a little cheaper, a little more obtainable. And like, let's see what they do. Hopefully, they kind of have to balance it, right? They don't want the FX9 to be better in most ways than the Burano, but also like it's not beyond Sony to cannibalize their own line. I feel like more than anyone else, they tend to like, here's a new feature in this like super cheap camera that even
Yep.
our flagship thing doesn't have, and like whatever.
Oh yeah, they absolutely do that, and it gets to where it's confusing trying to figure out which one of these should I buy depending on the features I want.
Yeah,
So,
and it's like,
definitely
well,
have-
actually, you should buy the cheaper one because it's better for like these things, even though X, Y, Z. And so, yeah, it wouldn't be out of place for the FX9 to all of a sudden be like the better buy over a Burano.
it'd be very interesting if the FX9 became like a Burano Lite, and that would be pretty compelling for a lot of people.
But I could see them going that route and then essentially being that. So super interesting. But like you said, for you and for me, the FX6 is maybe even more interesting just because it falls into that like mid-tier price point that's competing with things like the C80.
Yeah. So we'll see. Could get one or both of those, but it's there weren't any firm rumors on that. So
What would be interesting to me is if they kind of like combined some lines and took like the sensor that they're planning for like the A7S4 or whatever, XX4, I guess, and they stuck that into an FX6.
oh yeah, and
I
then
guess it would
just
be
like,
FX3 Mark II is what they would have to call it,
yeah, probably so.
because they wouldn't increment that number. So like if they had like an FX3 Mark II and they had the same sensor as the FX6, that would
yeah.
be interesting to me, because that's like what Canon did with the C80
Yeah.
and the C400 is like, these are very different price point cameras, and they kind of like hardware locked it based on some of the features as far as like, you know, what kind of memory cards and stuff that they had. And I could see Sony potentially going down that route, that they don't really share sensors in the same way.
Yeah.
They're not like Fuji that has like 2 sensors that they put in everything.
Yeah. They seem like they make so many different sensors. They probably just try and pick one that they think is appropriate for that camera. And
Right.
They're maintaining a pretty large variety of them.
Right. Yeah. But like if they're trying to make a complete line here of like, here's my R3, R9, and R6,
Yeah.
having them be as matchable as possible and very similar in like color and
That would be
noise and
great.
all that stuff.
Yeah, in terms of like having a B cam or whatever. it'd be great.
Exactly. And so like to me, it's like, hey, maybe there's an opportunity here to do release the FX6 and the FX3 at the same time, put the same sensor in both of them.
We can hope. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, you never know. So I think that's basically everything for Sony. It could stand to be a huge Sony year.
Well,
especially in
this
one year where
it's pretty slow for them.
they released like 2 cameras.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like it's going to be a hot year for Sony.
Yeah. Probably more so than maybe any of these other options. So Sony could stand to be a pretty good year. So I'm excited. I'm excited for it. I think that it's always good to see a new A7 like 5 or A7 IV like that line, especially whenever it's not like a talk year, whenever it's one where they're actually pushing and innovating. So
For sure.
I'm hoping that they kind of set a new baseline there, and then Canon comes in right behind them with a new R6.
Yeah. That seems very possible to me.
Yep. All right. So I guess we cut here and go part 2.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here, and we still have plenty more to talk about on these other brands.
I mean,
so-
we haven't talked about Pentax or Nikon or Lumix.
Yeah. Or OM system.
I mean, this could be the camera of the year 2025.
I mean, it's up for grabs, right?
Yep.
So we'll see. I guess we'll pick all that up next week.
Yeah.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us. And if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.